Hi there. My name is Liam O'Connor. I'm a member of the men's shed here in Gweedore called Dun Laoghaire, and I've been a member here for the last 11 years since we set up. When I was invited to be the chairman, the first chairman of the shed, back in 2016, I agreed to be the chairman on two bases. One is that we would all commit that we would still be there in 5 years' time. And the second thing is that we would leave the shed in a condition better than we found it. So this is our shed, typical of 400 and odd sheds around the country. A group of men and sometimes women who join us for different activities. We're basically committed to just looking after each other as a community. A score Cllr one and a Dine, as they say up here. So just to say that this is 16th of November also. So this is the end of a week where I'd say nobody in the world doesn't know what's going on between Donald Trump and BBC over what was actually a doctoring, and in my view, a deliberate doctoring of video material by the BBC. So this is important in relation to this video because I discovered something 2 nights ago, which I'm going to disclose at the end of the video. So hang around to watch that. So again, the reason I'm talking on this video is because there's an upcoming national conference for the Irish Men's Shed Association. And it's on this week in the Royal Marine Hotel in Dun Laoghaire. And effectively, this group of people, namely 4 of us who had applied to go, have been effectively barred by the people who run the IMSA from attending at this conference. So this video, I want to explain the background to what this is, but just to say here first, to note that it will be addressed by 3 politicians. The first person being the Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council, Jim Gildea, who's the chairman. The second speaker is the Minister for Health, Jennifer Carroll MacNeill. And the junior minister will then address, or Minister for State, Minister Jennifer Murnane O'Connor will address the meeting later on in the day. So that's Jennifer Carroll MacNeill, Minister for Health. And the relevance is here is that her department are fundamentally underpinning and paying for the costs of the IMSA. There's Jennifer Murnane O'Connor, also Minister for State, with special responsibility for public health, well-being, and the National Drug Strategy. So these are very critical issues for men and others in Ireland. And finally, we have Jim Gildea, who's the chairman of Dun Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council. And I will be sending this video to these people in advance of this event this week so that they're legally cognizant of some of the landscape of what's going on in the name of men's sheds in Ireland. Just to say, in trying to work with this technology, I'm working with an iPad. As you can see, I'm using a mouse here to try and work with it and to try and fold in a number of screenshots and photos to try and explain what I'm doing. So I'm learning along the way as we're doing this, which is wonderful. So just to move on to the Irish Men's Sheds. From the Irish Men's Shed website, I've noted a series of what they call their values, and one of them is in leadership. And it says that we demonstrate and promote leadership in everything we do. So I'm challenging that. And just to say that, as I say that, the reason that our shed is effectively barred from going, which I'll explain later, is because I have dared to challenge issues in terms of the value statements within the IMSA. So the first one is certainly an issue in relation to leadership. This is the most important one, honesty and openness. The IMSA claimed that everything we do is transparent and accountable to the shedders and to the public. So just please note that and hold that in your mind, that this is an outspoken claim by the IMSA to be transparent and accountable to the shedders and to the public. And to note that essentially, almost exclusively, all the funding for the Irish Men's Shed Association comes from public taxpayers' money, your tax and my tax. And then this other one's very important, equality and inclusion. It says our work creates places of belonging, participatory democracy, mutual respect, companionship, and community for all shedders. So this is a very important word here, participatory democracy, which is self-explanatory. So as a result of an ongoing experience between our shed and the Irish Men's Shed, so maybe if I just take step back a little bit here. In our shed in Gweedore back in early 2022, the shed, after going through a disciplinary process, a formal disciplinary process, which we ourselves had prepared and put together with no help from the IMSA. In fact, the IMSA didn't have and don't have such a process and never provided any support or training certainly for our shed. Maybe they have, if any other shed considered it, that's fine. There's no such information exists anywhere on their website or otherwise. Having done this, we expelled a member. This disgruntled ex-member has spent the last 4 years effectively terrorizing our shed, turning to everybody to try and close our shed down. And then finally, after engaging with the Minister for Rural Affairs, Catherine, no, not Catherine Contley, Heather Humphreys, as we know from the previous election, he made an intervention to hers, and she then sent a letter on to the IMS. And that's interesting in terms of what recently disclosed in the election. And only because of her sending this letter on, they became involved and decided then to follow through a disciplinary process, engaging a complaint made against us, which we're very fine with any process. But I want to make clear that from the first they arrived in our shed in January the 24th, no, January 2024, when Enda Egan turned up at our shed with a note taker, his information officer. We have never, in now almost 21 or 22 months, our shed has never been given a signed copy of whatever allegation that has been made against us. And we've been left in as you can imagine, a small rural community with lots of gossip, with a situation as this disgruntled ex-member has been able to vilify our shed, and we don't even know what we're supposed to be responsible for. So I have spent the last 20 months trying to extract this information from the Irish Men's Shed, and there's a whole process involved in that, and I have documented that whole process. So this involves a thing called a complaints handling procedure. It's a process. Just to say to you that while our issue dates back to 2022 and the complaint dates back before the start of 2024, this complaints process, again, using thousands of euro of taxpayer money, has only emerged this year in the 4th of July. Okay. And that's the first thing. The second and most important thing about this is that in section 8.10 of this same process, it stated that no one will be victimized by the IMSA for making a complaint or for providing information to those investigating complaints. Okay, so if you make a complaint, you will not be victimized. The reality, having made a complaint, as you will see from here, and because I have raised questions, we find ourselves barred from this conference. So this process has led me over the last number of maybe 2 years now to really ask myself the question of the IMSA itself and what is involved in who runs the IMSA, who funds it, where's the participatory democracy in it. So as a result of me raising these questions, I have found myself alienated, isolated, and picked on by the IMSA, and our shed is now suffering as a result of this. So we are discriminated against. You may have seen the video that I posted previously about a recording I made of a conversation that I tried to have with Ben Dolan, the information officer of the IMSA. And I will put a link to that video elsewhere. And just to say that, I forgot to say perhaps that I will be sending, I said, a video of this video to these various politicians to make them legally cognizant of what's going on in the background. It's up to them to decide um, to be cognizant of this when they address this conference. So I'll just have a quick brief play of this. I'll just move it along a little bit here.
Liam, I don't really have. Is there something I can do for you?
Well, I'm asking you, are you going, well, what is the answer to the questions? Is it reasonable that I should ask the questions, Ben? That's the first thing. That's a question.
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't really have anything to say to you at the moment, Liam.
But I mean, you are the communications officer of the IMSA. Why would you not want to say anything to me, Ben? Let's look at Ben. What's the problem? What's the problem in speaking to me?
I just don't really have anything to say to you at the moment.
Well, are you prepared to answer the questions? For example, did you?
So that's a 5-minute video. So I'll leave a link to that in the um, comment section to this video. So I will. Anyway, as a result of the fact that I posted this video online initially to the Dun Laoghaire sheds, men's sheds, IMSA WhatsApp group, which Ben Dolan is the group of which Ben Dolan is an administrator of from the IMSA. Suddenly, Ben Dolan, as you can see, removed me. So I was removed without process. Now, remember, he is a party that, if you call it that, dispute between he and I, if that's what you want to see it. You can't be a judge in your own case. Anyway, this is Ben Dolan's action, so to suppress me. In parallel with that, the Men's Sheds official Facebook page, of which I understand Ben Dolan is also an admin of, suddenly, as you can see here, went on pause for 52 days from the 10th of October. In other words, just to close down discussion, because I had posted information in relation to this process on that site, along with other men's sheds groups. So I have a situation where, for daring to ask questions and for daring to seek compliance with their own values in the IMSA, I personally have been victimized, and by extension, our shed has been victimized. The other thing to point out is that when I passed on as the chairman of the shed in 2020, I remained on in the elected role of president of our shed to help scaffold the sustainable leadership of the shed going forward. And I'm pleased to say that 5 years later, our shed, again, I should remind people of what sheds are about. Just go back to this one here. This is what sheds are about, folks. Okay. And this is the same all over the country. Maybe 400 and odd sheds of similar numbers. Maybe you can see with the bald heads and grey hair, it's not a young man's game per se, but you can see this is what we do. Now we find ourselves isolated. The other thing is that our present chairman, and again, he's a local in his community, his family in the community, he and his elderly father have been really subjected to a level of mental harassment by the disgruntled ex-member, which nobody should have to face. And as a result of this and the failure by the IMSA to even give us a copy of the complaint that we're supposed to be allegedly responding to, he had suffered from serious personal sense of stress and anxiety. And back in late September this year, he wrote to the CEO of the Irish Men's Shed, Enda Egan, and that information has been transmitted to all of the people who we have communicated with in the IMSA, that I should be the sole designated contact point for the IMSA in order that our chairman could get some relief from the stress that he's experiencing. The IMSA have continued to disregard that mandate. They've written to him and tried to call him, adding to his stress. So the very idea that this conference is being run with a focus on mental well-being, etc., is almost a disgrace. When I spoke to Enda Egan for a long, maybe a period of 2 hours, for almost 1 hour in our conversation, Enda Egan never once asked as to how our chairman was doing. Never once. His health, his well-being was of no interest to Enda Egan. So what is the Irish Men's Shed Association? So just let me look at this. There's the logo. Now, to say I first came across the fledgling idea when I met John Evoy back in, I think it was 2009. How long is that ago? That's 16 years ago. I first met John Evoy. I met him at another men's event in other processes that I was involved in, and for me, and have been involved in for over the last 35 years. I had at that stage been aware of the Australian movement of men's sheds. A friend of mine had got back from Australia and gave me actually a book about the Men's Sheds Association, so in Australia. So I knew it was a wonderful idea. But just look at the idea of what does the word Men's Sheds Association conjure up? The word association of sheds conjures up the idea of a peer group of equally valid, like-minded sheds who pull together in an association of equals to share, collaborate, promote the idea of what they're doing. So that's the image that exists for the Irish Men's Association. And it's really important that, having served the process of developing our shed for the first 5 years as its chairman, supporting the leadership of our shed in the last 5 years to bring us to where we are, I am passionately involved and engaged in the desire to help develop men's sheds, our shed plus sheds elsewhere, to get ready for what I consider to be a tsunami of need that will emerge by 2030 with a confluence of all sorts of problems that are causing and will cause enormous physiological and psychological issues for men who, by 2030, anybody born in before 1980 will be over 50. So my commitment has been and continues to be to working towards a sustainable, fit for purpose men's shed association for 2030. My challenge is that the present model is unsuitable. So, for example, in the idea of an association, the first thing it throws up is, if we're going to be associated, who are members of the association? What is the concept of representation? So I have spent a period of time trying to identify, where do our shed fit into the Irish Men's Shed Association that you all know about and who are running this conference, right? So if you go to the menssheds.ie website and you look at the section called Who We Are, this is what you're going to come across today. Here we have the board members. So if you ask yourself, when you're watching this, if you're in a shed, is our shed a member of the IMSA? What would being a member mean? So ultimately, being a member is, what voting rights do you have? Do you elect those who represent you? Do you have the power to vote for a view or an opinion? Is there a methodology for enforcing that or ensuring that? Now, in my research, I, for example, looked up the Irish Farmers Association. I was looking for a model that might be similar to what I would have expected in Men's Shed Association. And I discovered that, yes, there's a whole layer of documentation in their constitution for defining ordinary members, family members, what specific voting rights. And every paid up member of the IFA votes in who's going to be the president of the IMSA. They elect their county representatives. And there is an accountability up and down for what happens. So that's what I would expect. In examining what the IMSA is, that's what I'd expect. The other thing before I go into this is that the IFA is run, I should just come back to it, the IFA is run on the funds that are raised by the members themselves. So to that degree, they're accountable to their members, but they pay their own way in that sense. Now, on the other hand, the IMSA, and I would suggest that it's controlling a budget of perhaps €2 million this year. That money is almost exclusively coming from the taxpayers, you and I, and it is accountable to the taxpayers. So I want to come back to say, these are the board members. You can see that there's only one person here with a picture. These are all as if they're in MI5. Who are they? And the big question is, do these people represent you? Do they represent sheds around the country? Who elected them, and who specifically do they represent? Now, this question of, is your shed a member of the Irish Men's Shed Association? I have been trying to get an answer, a clear, cogent, unambiguous answer to this question for perhaps the last year. And when I say that, I just want to offer everything that I will say here or elsewhere is backed up by evidence, reproducible, auditable evidence. So, for example, we see here this person called the chair, Dylan MacDonald. There are two females, and I understand from my research now that these people they've only joined the board of the IMSA this year, so I know nothing about them. I have no idea who they are, and worse still, I have no idea whether they're even aware of anything that's actually going on at the IMSA. I don't know. Caroline McSweeney, Maura Rose McMahon. But whether it been sexist, I just presume they're not members of any sheds and certainly not representative of any sheds. I have no reason to believe Jerry Birmingham is a member of any shed, nor though he's been on the IMSA board for a number of years. And again, I know this because, again, I've spent the last number of months having tried to elicit this information from the IMSA directly. I've spent the last number of months following hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items released through Freedom of Information applications to various departments and funding agents. And it's only through this, for example, the charities regulator in Ireland, that I have been able to ascertain who's on the board, etc., and when they joined the board. Okay. So the question I had was, like, I don't even know who this guy, Dylan MacDonald, is. But here's an example that I want to show you. So I will cover this later on, but this is from a phone conversation that I had with Enda Egan, who's the CEO of the Irish Men's Sheds, on Wednesday, the 1st of October. And this much longer conversation will become the source of much deeper analysis in forthcoming videos, etc. But just listen to the question that I've asked of Enda. So I need to make sure that I just put this back to the beginning. So there's a bit of an issue here about I have to unmute this and then we listen to it.
Have the power of the organisation. You and some guy called Dylan somebody, a nameless fella with no picture. Sorry, can I ask you, is Dylan, whatever his name, McDonald, is he a member of a shed somewhere?
No, he's not a member of a shed, no.
I'm not surprised.
Listen to this again.
Whatever his name, MacDonald, is he a member of a shed somewhere?
No, he's not a member of it, no.
I'm not surprised. You have the power of the organisation.
So just once more.
No, he's not a member of it, no.
I'm not surprised.
So now, from the horse's mouth, from the CEO of the Irish Men's Sheds, I now discovered that this person, Dylan MacDonald, who you say you can't even identify him from, I don't even know what he looks like. I have no idea. I've tried to find out by tracing a digital footprint. I have no idea what role this person plays in the world. This person is the chairman of the Irish Men's Shed Association. He's not even a member of the shed. So this started to make me pose deeper. So the question here is, a Men's Shed Association, a group of peers working collaboratively, respecting their own independence, but working supportively with each other, and coming together to elect a representative body who may speak on our behalf, are now represented by four faceless people. Person there whose face there, I have no reason to believe these people, any of them, are members of sheds, but I have now confirmation that Dylan MacDonald is not a member of any shed. Right? So let's look further into the IMSA. So earlier this year on LinkedIn, the Irish Men's Shed advertised a job for an information officer. And when I looked up the details of this, I discovered there's an about the company section. So I think this was very relevant. So it states here, the Irish Men's Shed Association is a member-based organisation. So that says in English that it's an organisation which is member-based. Again, which gives the illusion that the members are the sheds around the country. All of you 450 sheds of people just like our shed, working really well at the coalface, doing wonderful work, man. But that this organisation is member-based. Then it went on to state that as a grassroots organisation, we believe strongly in the autonomy of each individual shed. It calls it a grassroots organisation. So there's evidence of the fact that what is being presented in the public space is an illusion that the Irish Men's Shed Association is made up of sheds and they are members of an organization which is self-directed. In other words, it elects its own representation, its leadership. By definition, you would have expected to have a process, a constitution, a regular AGM, that there would be motions put forward and backwards, etc. The event in Dun Laoghaire this week is not that. Be quite sure that that's not happening. So I delve further in this. And I need to focus here on the person who gave me that answer. Glibly just saying, no, he's not a member of the shed. This is Enda Egan, who's the chief executive of the IMSA. Now, remember that the sheds are effectively run. If you look at any shed, you'll have a handful of people in sheds who are doing all the work in the sheds. And just like our shed, it's done voluntarily around the country, doing amazing work around the country. And when I've spoken to people, and only after enormous tranches of multiple layers of data that were provided to me under FOI application, of which it'll take me months to try and work through this detail. I have been unable to ascertain from the IMSA about the remuneration package for the chief executive. This is unbelievable. I haven't gone through the RTE debacle over the last period of time to see that we're still in this business of trying to cover up what people get. So what I have been able to ascertain to date, that because it's made up of, by the way, remuneration packages are made up of all small different types of elements, whether they're side benefits, wages, uh, travel allowances, and other side issues, etc. So far, I feel I can piece together a package that summates to about €120,000 per year. Now, the reason I'm highlighting this, Endegan doesn't interest me. This is not about Endegan. The point is that when you're paid €120,000 a year, as a fella says, what is it, Seamus Brennan would have said, you're playing senior football now. I expect from this person the competency of someone who's earning that bracket. To give you context around that, this is an ad I came across in September 2025. Okay. It's for the National Women's Council. So this is for the CEO of the National Women's Council. A job is advertised for September 2025 at a salary. Here's the salary. I didn't write this. This is public advertisement for a job at €84,050 per annum for the National Women's Council. This person is on a wage 50% higher than the woman. I presume it's a woman. Is that sexist? I presume it's going to be a woman who's going to chair, or is going to be the CEO of the National Women's Council. Although I have to question my own morals in relation. Like maybe I can't say that anymore. Anyway, the fact is that that person is that person. This person earns 1.5 times the salary of a person who's going to lead and be the CEO of the National Women's Council. So this is not Mickey Mouse money. And so therefore, when I am seeking quality performance and professionalism from the CEO of the Irish Men's Shed, I make no apologies whatsoever for demanding quality performance at that rate of salary, which is really important. And just remember, all you people who are working at the cold face for nothing, this person is earning this sort of money. So when you're sitting there and you're wondering why you haven't got your men's shed grants, and just to say that, I presume that unless our shed is being further discriminated against, that as of this weekend, your shed has not received the men's shed sustainability grant of up to 3,000, and it's almost nearly the end of November this year. And the IMSA were paid €50,000 on top of all the other money get to administer something that I could have done for them for half the price, but effectively. So no apologies there. Remember, you're talking about a guy paid 120,000, and when I say that, part of my future analysis will be to eke out from all the released information, all the little bits and pieces that have gone up to this essential quality. Now, this salary is 1.5 times the salary of the incoming chief executive of the National Women's Council. Just to remind you, this is what you get for this money.
Can you answer that, yes or no?
I can't. I think.
Sorry, the context of this is, in the conversation I had with Enda Egan on the 1st of October, I put to him the question. So listen to the question and answer.
The question I have is our shed a member of IMSA? Can you answer that, yes or no?
I can't. I think it is, but I'm not able to. I'll look that up for you, but
No, sorry.
No, I'm just going to play that again. Just be pedantic about this.
The question I have is our shed a member of IMSA? Can you answer that, yes or no?
I can't. I think it is, but I'm not able to. I'll look that up for you, but
No, sorry.
Okay. So you've heard that response. I just want to remind you, this is what this person's paid. This is like Champions League football. And the response I'm getting is from a Sunday pub football team manager. I want to replay that again. And I make no apologies for this. At 120, at 1.5 times the salary of the CEO of the National Women's Council. Look at this.
The question I have is our shed a member of IMSA? Can you answer that, yes or no?
I can't. I think it is, but I'm not able to.
No. What do you mean this guy thinks it is? I'm not able to tell you, but I sort of maybe whatever. And by the way, this quality of response characterizes what went on for almost 2 hours with this person.
Look that up for you, but
No.
The second thing is, you'll hear what he says here.
I think it is, but I'm not able to. I'll look that up for you, but
No.
No, he says, I'm not able to tell you, but I'll look it up for you. But no, see this thing, I'll look it up for you and I'll get back to you. This is almost the sales pitch for Enda Egan. He never follows up. I can tell you categorically, he has never come back to me to clarify that. In fact, no one at the IMSA has, and that's the core issue. If you're in a group, just jump out of this here again. If you're a member of a body and you have, sorry, well, if you're a member of a body, by definition, you have some rights within that organization, rights to have representation, to elect who represents you, etc. So again, this guy cannot answer the question with any level of definition.
Can you answer that, yes or no?
I can't. I think it is, but I'm not able to. I'll look that up for you, but
No, sorry.
So we'll just follow on and see what happens in the rest of this short clip.
When you say, sorry,
my understanding of it
this question has been asked again and again and again and again, and you, at your elevated package of 120,000 a year, is telling me I think it is.
Sorry, just to say, during my whole conversation, at no stage did Enda Egan ever dispute the sums of money that I was talking. But to be clear, he never said to me, I'm not earning it like this sum of money. He did say, and the analysis of that recording will be part of a subsequent video, that he acted as if always he was forced to take this money. He said, I don't decide those monies, they're decided by the HSE. So, but he never in any way suggest that this wasn't an accurate reflection on what he earns.
This is fundamental. It's fundamental. Now, Dylan McDonald, so I presume you work under his guidance. He's the board director, he's the chairman. He's been asked this question. And the HSE have been blind carbon copy in watching this guy doing nothing. And there's a reason for that. Because I'll be saying these people have no authenticity in using public money and claiming to be representative people when they're not.
So that's the fundamental issue here, is about, again, just jumping into this. The fundamental issue here is about authenticity of being a truly representative of the Association of Men's Sheds. I've already showed you that there are 5 members on the board of directors, 2 of them women, 1 of them with a picture of man, and 2 others who you can't see who they are. And then Enda Egan has already explained to me, or admitted to me, that Dylan McDonald is not even a member of a men's shed. So let me just look here at, so I just need to blow into this a moment here. Like, I want to explain it. So just to say it, in September 2025, I've been writing to this chair at Men's Shed. So I finally extracted from Aidan O'Gorman, who was then the assistant CEO, contact email for this chairman, who you can't say he's a ghost in the picture. Nobody knows who he is. And now I know he's not even a member of Men's Shed. And I've been trying to get in contact with him to communicate with him, ask him questions. He had never, ever, ever either responded nor even acknowledged receipt of any of my emails. So I wrote him, I wanted to ask a very unambiguous question, and just to say that in this, I blind carbon copied this guy called Aidan O'Sullivan from the HSE, because he had been the deciding officer in my FOI release, and I understand is the chair of a committee which decides on funding. So I thought it was important to keep him mindful of the type of questions that were being asked. It was blind carbon copied, so Dylan McDonald, and also was copied to our chairman. By the way, everything that I've always done is I copy in or fold in our chairman to make sure that he is cognizant and our shed is kept up to date with something. So the basic question that was been asked, very clear, is Gilbo Navarre the Men's Shed Guidor a member of the IMSA, the organisation which you chair, which is registered as a charity with the Charities Regulator and which draws almost exclusively its funding from public monies? I wish to emphasize, in light of your decision not to acknowledge or respond to any of my previous emails, that it's not a complex question which would require a delayed response, and I exhort you, one, to acknowledge your receipt of my query, and two, to provide a yes or no answer by return mail. So it's pretty clear the question I'm asking. I had asked, as you've seen, in the Egan, and I said, well, I think you are, but I'm not sure. So then I've asked Dylan McDonald, I just want you to know, they've never, ever, ever clarified this issue, because it's really important. So the IMSA has been repeatedly asked and has failed to answer. Not now, by the way, it's kind of unambiguous. There's nothing complex about the question. I'm a member or I'm not a member. The question then might raise is, what does membership mean? Right. So again, having done my research, I finally discovered, again, it was a bit like hen's teeth again with the IMSA. But I did find a copy of the constitution for the IMSA, which is registered with the Charities Regulator and the Companies Office. So if you want to know what a member is, in the constitution, it says, for the purpose of registration, the number of members of the company is 7. So it was set up with 7 people. The company may from time to time registered increase or decrease, but never below 3. The members of the company shall be the subscribers to the memorandum of association, the current serving directors of the company, and such persons as the directors shall from time to time admit to membership. So I've repeatedly asked other men's sheds where I've met with, is your shed a member? And almost, in fact, apart from a couple of enlightened ones who have learned the hard way, they all believe they're members of the IMSA. And then this constitution sets your rights of membership. So remember, go back to what do you expect from association when you sign up as a member? If you're a member, and we simplify things, if you call yourself an ordinary member, because someone else has suggested in Facebook interaction that we might be associate members. There is no term called associate members anywhere in any documentation in relation to the IMSA. I would expect from an association of men's sheds, it's a group of people who are self-directed, who among themselves organize their own representation. They elect, they appoint, they set up a board. That board then decide if there's money available, that they can employ an executive. And that executive works under instruction from the board, and the board are accountable to the members. To me, that's the model that I see. I examine the IFF and I say, yeah, this works. This happens. The IFA has been around for a long period of time. Okay. Not the IMSA. So I move forward then and let me see what else I've discovered. Oh yeah. So, but here's what I have discovered under my FOI. By the way, I should say that, sorry, just moving along to here. I should say that in terms of the IMSA, the documents that I've shown you there, just for example, see that document there I showed, the complaints handling procedure, which I have tried to invoke. So I have made complaints, by the way, about various members of the executive and the board using their procedure. Those complaints are being buried. Just been put in the bin. They're not being dealt with as if like an ostrich sticking his head in the hedge, that this is just in some way going away. You will not find this complaints handling procedure anywhere on the IMSA website, strangely enough. That's an issue of governance, by the way. And there is a section on governance, right? Who we are, our board members, what we do, etc., right? The next thing you will not find there is you will not find, let me just go on to it here. You won't find a copy of their constitution. You will not find a copy of the IMSA constitution on the IMSA website. And you won't find this document either. So this is a document that was one of the hundreds of pages that were released to me under FOI from the Charities Regulator quite recently. So I've only started to go through this. But then I see this document here. So just look at this here. This is called the fee structure of the IMSA. So it's the first time you'll see the word registered. So this term is used, we were the registration fee. So you see the registration fee of €25 a year, or £25 in the north of Ireland. So this is so many people who think they're members actually have registered with the IMSA, but this is what it gives you. And just note at the top, you have no voting rights. You get a certificate of registration. I can only tell you that I certainly haven't seen any certificates issued for our shed, certainly for numbers of years. You'll have eligibility for grants, supports, partnerships, etc. Office-based support, access to the IMSA, access to sheds for lights, access, but no access to the corridors of power. You have no rights. But more importantly, I'm trying to find out, where did this document come from? So the only definition, the only detail I can see is this code number. But there's no reference, and as of yet, in my journey with the charities regulator, I haven't been able to ascertain who generated this document, who decided on this document, who voted on this document, who elected those who voted on this document, and who submitted it, and what legitimacy or authenticity does it actually have? Okay, so let's move on a little here. Now, this is from a document. Again, I have hundreds and hundreds of pages released to me under FOI, and it will take me a work which would consume more than €120,000 to actually go through this detail. And as many people have said in the past, not least Michael McDowell when he was Minister of Justice, the devil is in the detail. But it says here that to ensure all sheds and sheds have a direct line of engagement to the National Association and can have their needs and concerns addressed at a local, regional, and national level. So this is a submission made looking for money from the state by the IMSA. And again, this is not so. Our shed in Gweedore is one of maybe 26 sheds in Donegal. We have not had a county volunteer or representative since, I think, back in 21 or 22. We have no say in voting on anything to do with the Irish Men's Shed Association. So this document, which is a submission, is fraudulent in the degree that it misleads the person reading this, that this is an organization which either promotes equality or is involved in, what was the term used earlier? Participatory democracy. Let me just to be sure, because that's what I need to do. Anytime I say something, I need to go back and confirm. And again, these are the limitations of me working under using an iPad, shooting over and back. Yeah, so our work creates places of belonging, participatory democracy. Okay. So if participatory democracy ends up in an organization which has, this is your board, unrecognizable. By the way, there's no way, I've been unable to get contact details for any of these people. I can't contact Caroline McSweeney, Maura Rose McMahon, who are new members, and do you know what's going on? I can't communicate with any of those people. Dylan MacDonald had failed and refused to come back and even acknowledge my conversation, and I'm now informed that he's not even a member of the sheds, of a shed. And all of this run by someone who's earning, in a package of 120,000 a year, 1.5 times what the job of the CEO of the National Women's Council was advertised at in September this year, not 2015, 2025. Let me go on here and see what else I've ascertained. Oh yeah, so I meant to come back to this guy here. At the start of this, I said in this week, this is today is Sunday the 16th. This is the end of the week. There's been the news, and certainly the BBC News has been, world news has been totally covered by this issue of Donald Trump and the fact that BBC had doctored. In other words, they've taken two pieces of information, put them together to wrongfully give an idea that was incorrect. And they're being held to account for this. And it is regarded as unacceptable. So in order to set this up here, let me...
A nameless fellow.
Okay, so we'll start with this here to explain what I discovered just the other night. So this goes back, this again is an extract from the long conversation I had with Enda Egan on, I think, the 1st of October. 1st of October 25. So just listen through this short clip.
You have the power of the organisation. You and some guy called Dylan somebody, a nameless fella with no picture. Sorry, can I ask you, is Dylan, whatever his name, McDonald, is he a member of a shed somewhere?
No, he's not a member of a shed, no.
I'm not surprised.
Now, I know I've played this for you before, but it just shows there's context and continuity in this.
I really am surprised. Your website claims that the board of directors is chosen and that a number of positions are reserved to be voted for on a provincial basis. Now,
So I just need this important because of what I've now discovered, right?
I'm surprised. Your website claims that the board of directors is chosen and that a number of positions are reserved to be voted for on a provincial basis.
Now, obviously, I'm going to show you evidence about that now. But just to point out that, again, in a participatory democracy and in the idea that sheds would elect those who represent them, that I've just pointed out to Enda Egan that their website states that, again, just so that we get the words of what I actually said, and then I'll show you the evidence.
Claims that the board of directors is chosen and that a number of positions are reserved to be voted for on a provincial basis. Now, I've been to Sheds in 2015, long before you ever probably, well, certainly before you were employed by the Sheds. This never happened.
So just to say to you that since 2015, when I became involved at the Armain Shed in Dun Laoghaire, our shed is in the province of Ulster. Our shed have never, ever, ever been, just to say, our shed have never, ever participated in, been invited to participate in, been cognizant on, or made aware of any election of a board member to represent our province. So are we the only ones in the country who's had that experience? And if so, is Donegal that different? So what's important about it is I informed Enda Egan of this on the 1st of October this year. Okay. So I had known this because I had gone to the trouble of, if you go to the mainshed.ie website and we look at a section called Who We Are, and it describes the board. And I took this screenshot, and this is important in relation to the Donald Trump stuff. I took this screenshot on the 11th of September this year. So I want to draw your attention to the paragraph that I referred. I'll just read it out for you. Board members are recruited in a variety of ways. I understand that. A certain number of seats are set aside for representatives from the sheds themselves. The question is, how many seats? That's not identified, right? What's these words here? I highlight them. Elected on a province by province basis. So there are 4 greenfields in Ireland, 4, as the song says, and 4 provinces. So there's 4 provinces. So how many? The answer to that would be a minimum of 4 members' seats would be set aside for representatives from the sheds, elected. Do you understand? Elected. So in any man's language, in any woman's language, in any person's language, elected would be elected on a province by province basis by sheds. Okay. Board members are also recruited from other fields in order to bring their relevant expertise and experience to the board, but for the benefit of men said nationally. Now, it doesn't say who is going to pick these or recruit these people. So there's no suggestion there that sheds themselves would have any say in this. But where it's clear, it states here that sheds have set aside in the board that the process is there to elect on a province by province basis numbers of shed reps. And that was the status on screenshot of the Irish Men's Sheds website, mensheds.ie, on the 11th of September last. On the 14th of November, which is, I think, Friday night, just by chance, and probably because of, just to jump into this, like for the last week, I have been following the minutiae and the detail of Donald Trump and BBC's issues. And this is not, I'm not taking any issue in relation to who Donald Trump is, a behavior or anything like that. I'm focusing on the issue that I watched the detail of these videos and how they were spliced together. And while I now see the BBC are claiming that they have offered an apology, they are still claiming that this was an error of judgment, an inadvertent mistake. Anybody with half a brain and any experience of editing, and I've watched this, and even the way the frame by frame cut is done in such a way that even the cadence of the audio, you couldn't tell it. It's almost impossible to tell that it's done this way. And this wasn't done by chance. Someone deliberately and with cognizance did what they did. That's with Donald Trump. So probably I was more aware on Friday night when I saw this stuff. It jumped out at me. So the same document, which I've just shown you on the 11th of September, explicitly stated that there was seats in the board set aside to be elected by sheds. You can't say by members, because I've already established that sheds are not members. That's the whole point. Your shed, like our shed, is not a member of the IMSA. No matter what you think about it, because again, if you're a member, you have certain rights. So the idea of this association would be that you have rights to vote and have a say in what's done in your organization. You have no rights to that regard. But this statement on their site, and this information, by the way, this is what the IMSA have posited to draw down all this public money, of which Jennifer Carroll, MacNeill, the other one, Murnane O'Connor, and the government are basically taking this stuff on board, and this is what your public money has been used to support. On the 14th of November, these 7 words were erased, elected on a province by province basis. So this is just to say, look, obviously, I don't have the power of Donald Trump. Otherwise, I'd be MSA for 5 billion, right? I don't have any power except the power to make this video. I can bring this to your attention. But if ever I saw an insight to an insidious behavior being carried out by people, and the people who I have identified as being involved are, and Egan, with his pay package 1.5 times the CEO of the National Women's Council, and this faceless person called Della MacDonald, who's refused to answer or address any of the questions I've asked. That now, who else? So the question, obviously, as I've asked in the BBC, is who did this? So who has the technical capacity to modify this website? The only person that I know who I think may be modifying this, and the question is Ben Dolan as the communications officer. I have unearthed the fact that a sum of, again, sorry, just to be clear here, in one of the documents I unearthed, I think I saw a reference to a sum of €7,500 being granted to update a site or something. So money has been, as of yet, I haven't ascertained who that money was paid to and what work was done. I can say that the site is generally not up to date, and the information on it is in many cases, especially when it talks about shed context, is inaccurate. However, this is either that was true or it was false. and this is true or it's false. Who changed it? Why did they change it? Who supervised and directed this change to take place? These questions need to be answered. So, in all of this, I meant to say at the start of this that in trying to extract hen's teeth from the IMSA over the last year and a half, basic, plain, reasonable, and rational questions, and particularly when one considers that almost exclusively all of the funding pays for not the voluntary stuff that any of you people do, but for the executives, etc., in the IMSA. It comes from taxpayers' money, yours and mine. And we've already seen in the Oireachtas committees, etc., vis-a-vis the RT, if you use public money, you can't just pretend that nobody's going to know what's going on. That day is over. It just is not going to happen. And I have dedicated countless hours to pull together this data. And I am going to bring it to the attention of those people who fund this, because I believe, in my view, I believe that a cabal of people have basically stolen the mantle of a fantastic idea. And I said, when I met Johnny Voy back in 2009, I admired the work he was doing. I was going to come into an age group where it was going to be particularly suitable for me. And I have committed my job in service to that cause, both in the last 11 years, and will continue to do that. So, I mean, my interest is to try and ensure that the most fit for purpose men's shed association can be in place by 2030. The model that exists, the unrepresentative model, is not okay. So in doing that, what I've experienced in terms of blocking, interference, uh, delays with the IMSA has been all supported by heavy hitting legal advice. And I have no, so I'm saying, like, because I've read a lot of the letters, I know it's not written by these people. And in my trawl, I dug up a shocking fact, and which in my recording with and Egan, he confirmed that Mason, Hayes and Kern, one of the most expensive legal firms in the country, they're the people who are providing opportunity and facility for the Irish Men's Shed to try and block the most reasonable questions I'm asking. And then people say to me, believe you can't be saying this stuff because it's not true. So again, the wonderful thing about FOI that I've learned since 1987 when I came in at first, if you ask the right questions, as John Bruton said, if you ask the wrong questions, you don't get the right answers. But if you do ask the right question, if you can find out the right question, you can get all sorts of interesting information. And one of the things that I got from and this came from the HSE and the Department of Health. So again, this is Jennifer O'Neill's. This is the Minister of Health's bailiwick. This is just one little piece of information of an invoice that came from Mason, Hayes and Kern for some work, some of the work. You know, that work only comes to about 4,500. Only this is thousands upon thousands, right? But for example, they're paying fees of, this is a rate per hour, €400 per hour plus 23% VAT. That's nearly €500 an hour that's been paid to Mason, Hayes and Kern to try and prevent people like me or you, anybody who dares to ask a question. Now, it would be one thing if it was their own money. This is not their own money. This is your money. It's my money. €500 a year in I think it was a local enhancement grant or something in the, when we were forced to go to the county council looking for money to keep our sheds going for utilities earlier this year. We were told in Donegal the max we would ever be able to apply for is 500. Our shed got €398. The IMSA is wasting €500 an hour trying to prevent the exposure of the corruption of thought process that even goes on behind these people's minds. And again, I said, I don't deal in gossip. I deal in facts. So there's a lot more of this out there. Now, I said earlier that the chairman of the IMSA, who's a guy called Dylan MacDonald, who I've now identified as, he doesn't, he's not a member of a shed. So I was away for a number of weeks traveling. Thank God for my mental safety, I'd have to be away in northern France with my woman in a motorhome, trying to make sense of all this madness. And I arrived home, and given that this guy had never responded to me, suddenly I see this. I'll just show it you actually in real life, okay? So just to say it here. So I come home, I see this letter in my door, right? So I email people, I live in a digital world, and somebody saying, look at the quality of the calligraphy of this here. Handwritten stuff. Somebody taking a lot of time to doing this. And watch this. Typical for my days in CAE. Anybody remember these things here? Look at the money. And what will I tell you? You see the weight in that paper. See the weight. Minimum 150 gram, maybe 170 gram. This is not like flimsy Mickey Mouse sort of A4 paper. This is heavy duty stuff. So it sounds like this is what you get from a professional. Okay. So this is now a letter that finally Dylan McDonald comes out of the woodwork and he writes to me. Okay. So we should really have a look at what he wrote. So that's it there, right? So he had, by the way, not only had written me, but he'd emailed me as well. So he was to be sure, to be sure. And just, I suppose, people here may say, well, like, I'm only hearing your side of the story. And of course, I mean, all I'm interested in is having the story out there. We all hear everybody's side. But I haven't been able to find any information or I can contact anybody. I've been blocked from contacting everybody. But again, through the magic of FOI, sure didn't I find out where Enda Egan's number was? Because he had to produce this information as one of the applications for contractual documents to take money out of the state. So that's the email he gave. Sorry, that's the phone number he gave. Except I rang this phone number because I wanted to contact. I'm going around here for a year and a half, and I said, I wanted to ring him to say, is there something that I'm doing wrong in the question I'm asked? Am I barking up the wrong tree? Like I'm saying, in talking to him, I wanted to say, is there some big picture in the background that I'm missing out on when I ask these questions? Because I have no idea why anybody in the world would just continue to obfuscate and block reasonable, rational questions. So I rang the number. Sure, that's what you do. I rang that mobile, and some poor woman down the country kept answering the phone. And I kept thinking, geez, your man is obviously now refusing to answer the phone. He's getting somebody to answer it. And it turned out, the poor woman had nothing to do with it was a wrong number. So like every other experience I've had in the IMSA, like every other experience that I've had, it's just amateurish, totally amateurish. Now you say, look, I know you'd be picking on detail. Let me show you something here that might, for those of you who care, anybody who cares. Let me go in close in there. See the bottom name there? It says Maurua Rose McMahon. Marua Rose McMahon. It's a heavily produced document, 150, 170 grams, all heavy duty stuff. And the person's called Marua when her name is Maura. 120 grand a year. Pub football. That's what this is. Pub football. And the problem is that our sheds are exposed to this. So if you have a query about this, and if you want to say, if you want to challenge Enda Egan, I mean, this guy is supposed to be your CEO, right? Then there's the number you can ring. I'll just come back to, I was going to run this as my last one, but as I've said at the outset of this, our shed has been barred. You might say, what is that? Why that? Our shed, within about an hour of notice being given of this event, next Wednesday, that's the 19th of November in Dun Laoghaire, I had applied for our shed for 3 representatives, and then when I check in the shed the next day, I increased that to 4. So in what was called a queue, so just to explain again, we were told at the outset because a post had been distributed in the Donegal Men's Sheds Network WhatsApp group, which I obviously had access to before I was so suddenly removed by Ben Dolan. We were told this was going to be on a first come, first served basis. So within an hour, I had already made an application to Geraldine Meehan, who's a health and well-being administrator. Imagine that name, a health and well-being administrator. And this person has persistently refused and failed to communicate back with me. So effectively, I then supplied the names of the individuals. I've been compliant in every way, shape, and form. And I've been told by at least one other shed that Geraldine wrote back a lovely letter saying, looking forward to seeing the day, Geraldine, etc. no communication with us. So we've been left completely and absolutely out in the cold. No room in the inn, and therefore suppression of all possible conversations. So the various ministers and politicians are going to turn up there, are turning up to a place where they, up to now, would have been cognitively naive about. So this video will be sent to them in time for them to know what's actually going on, supposedly in the name of Mensheds, by this group of people who've not been elected by you, so cannot claim any level of representativeness. Anyway, the good news is that, strangely, just in the time frame, that because I'm involved in a Groundworks Northern Ireland WhatsApp group for Mensheds in Northern Ireland, because again we're at least in Ulster, so there's a shed fest in Belfast next Wednesday. And isn't this a gas? Like, we're talking about. So I contacted him the other day, and this guy called Barry rang me back, and he said, "Guys, you are most welcome here." And I really tell you, so there's no room for us in Dun Laoghaire, because Donegal, there's no room for you guys because you ask awkward questions. This guy Barry rang me back, and not only he said you're welcome, but he said he can park round at the castle car complex, a car park, and when you do, get the car parking receipt and we'll refund you. So there's no room for us in the south of Ireland or Republic. We have to go to the north of Ireland where we're going to be made welcome. But we'll go there because you go. If somebody wants, if somebody's welcome, you'll go there. Plus the fact that, in Arshed, we have been constantly trying to examine how we can operate, certainly in terms of peace monies and support it with sheds in the north. In fact, on our way back from France just 2 weeks ago, myself and Mary dropped into a shed in South Armagh. We sang the boys from County Armagh. We sang for them, and we did the Star of the County down as well. And then we went on to Armagh City Shed, and like any of you guys who ever visited sheds, the most welcoming place in the world. So don't get me wrong, the men's sheds are a wonderful thing. The people who purport to represent you and have basically, in my view, sorry, not just my view, on the basis of the evidence that I've so far ascertained, this is wrong and it needs to be changed now. I just wanted to then finish up with that email that this guy sent me, and Dylan McDonald. So it's the only time he's ever contacted me. So just to put the context in here, this letter, this thing is, well, look, do you know the other thing about this guy? The letter isn't dated. Well, just to be sure, I don't want to make a statement here now if I'm wrong. Okay, so okay, I'm just trying to. In fact, I'll just literally look at the hand while I'm at it here. I don't like to say things unless I've triple checked them. Yeah, so this really official looking letter. This is really high level professionalism without a date. What sort of clowns am I dealing with? This is it, right? I'm sorry, as a fellow says, my frustration tolerance threshold has been exceeded a long time ago. Anyway, on the last day of September this year, our chairman had written to Enda Egan. He'd written an email to Enda Egan, letting him know of the incredible stress and anxiety in all this messing with the IMSA over the non-management or the total unprofessional mismanagement of a complaint made against us by the IMSA. I'd had enough. I mean, he's been in a situation where he's been stalked by an individual. His father has been stalked by an individual. His elderly father is not in good shape. And all of this facilitated by the failure of the IMSA to get on and do its job. That he just said he was going to give up. He was just going to walk away. And I said, if you walk away, all these people will win. So I suggested to him, no, I said, just, contact the IMSA. So he's contacted the IMSA and specifically told them not to contact him directly, because it was affecting his mental well-being. This conference is supposed to be about well-being. So what does this character do? The first thing he writes, let me just look at the first thing he states in this, right? So these are my annotations through all of this. That's how I operate. I am copying this letter to the chairman, whom you have stated you are representing. And as I understood, this man is the current chairman of the Gweedore Shed. Now, I didn't say I was representing. The chairman informed
the CEO, that I was representing the shed in this issue and that I was the only source of contact. And here again, after being told not to contact our chairman because of the distress recording, this person, without regard for the mental well-being of our chairman, wrote to him. Right? Now, there's a whole lot of things he makes here. So, for example, he's talking about the complainant sent a complaint to the IMSA. He actually forgot to point out that it was
Mr. Heather Humphrey's office. So it came, as we learned during the election, a letter that comes from a minister gets a lot more attention, which is the only reason the IMSA got involved. Now, there's so many elements of this thing here that are, questionable, but I want to go particularly because of what I've just said about the Donald Trump thing. So it moves on to a date called the 1st of October, 2025. And again, to remind you, when I played clips, it was from a conversation from the 1st of October, 2025. He used this language: I demanded a meeting with the CEO. So again, I would ask, where can he show I used the word demanded? Threatening if the CEO did not meet you, you would initiate actions that would significantly impact the IMSA. Okay. So let's be quite clear. I've made it quite clear for the period of time that my process was going to be to surface the reality and to make people take responsibility. The impact this will have on the group of people who presently have, in my evidence, taken control of what is a wonderful association, which should be a member-based organization, which is, as they have claimed, to be driven from the ground, okay, from the grounds up, right? But isn't. It says also impact the CEO, the CEO's position within the organization, and absolutely be quite clear. I want to make it quite clear that my experience of dealing with this person on 120,000 a year means this person is not fit for consumption, needs to go. I'm absolutely clear about that. I'm not the person to adjudicate that, but I believe that Controller and Auditor General and those people who are responsible for ensuring that we get value for money with our taxpayers' money, that's my requirement. That if you're not up to the task, you shouldn't be there. Right. So here's the bit that really is critical. The CEO, that's Enda Egan, this is a statement as fact. The CEO attended a meeting with you on the same day. So the same day is October the 25th. So the CEO attended a meeting with me. Now, I don't know where the CEO is. I'm up in Donegal. And the CEO was supported in that meeting by the acting assistant CEO, who's a person called Brenda Brady. Okay. I have been informed that during that meeting, you criticized the CEO and the IMSA aggressively. Note the word aggressively. Now, you'll have known from my import or whatever in this video. I mean, I certainly am going to be quite challenging. And if I'm dealing with someone who's on a package of 120,000 a year, when I watch you, me, and other guys at the coalface working so hard for nothing and with very little resources, I don't apologize for being quite demanding and strident in terms of getting quality work, and threatened the IMSA. So listen to the language here, the selective. So the statement is, you criticize the CEO and the IMSA aggressively and threaten the IMSA, including with complaints to its funders, the charities regulator, media disclosures, as well as further, let me just go down here, data subject access requests and freedom of information requests. Right. It is noted that you've already submitted numerous data subject requests to the IMSA and FOI requests for the funders. The reason they know this, again, just jumping out of here for a moment, sorry, the reason they know this about FOI is because I told them I was looking for the information of the FOI. They have no say in whether I get the FOI stuff or not. I mean, they missed the point. The whole idea of freedom of information, and particularly with public money, is you don't have any power to cover up. And they in some ways seem to think that if someone asks questions of FOI, it's a bad thing. I mean, look, it's completely disillusioned, dissociated, cognitive bias behaviour.
So anyway, I just want to finish up before I go back to tell you what actually happened. It then says, when the CEO, I just want to highlight this here, when the CEO proposed mediation as a possible way to resolve your issues, you declined, stating that it was too late to engage in such a process. Okay, so I want to say to you now, this has taken months and months and months and months to actually get Dylan MacDonald, who I now understand isn't a member of a shed at all, who's the chairman of the...
Sorry, my AirPod fell out, so I'm not sure how the audio will have been distracted. But I hope it hasn't been. So go back. So Dylan MacDonald, after months of failing to even respond or acknowledge to any of my approaches, has come out here. So he's made these statements. Now, these are made as statements of fact. So either what Dylan MacDonald said is true and accurate, or it's false, it's defamatory, but it's also very dangerous. So in terms of saying lines of Trump and the BBC, I've just shown you where the IMSA, somebody who is control of the IMSA website, has already, and then just pop over to that, just so that we're not confused about things here. So let me just go to this. So again, I need to, sorry, just bear with me one moment here. So I've already shown you that the IMSA site, between the 11th of September, I don't know when this was done, between the 11th of September when I made a screenshot and the 14th of November, someone deliberately doctored the IMSA website, right, to remove the reference to the fact that there would be a set aside set of seats on the board for elected board members elected by sheds on a province by province basis. So that's one absolute perversion of reality that took place. The one I'm dealing with here on a personal level is even worse. So it says here that this guy said, he said that he's claimed here that I had a meeting with the CEO and Egan. The CEO attended a meeting with you on the same day, and the CEO was supported in that meeting by the acting CEO, who is Brenda Brady. Okay, so this is either true or it's false. So I just want to make it clear here, right? I've never met Brenda Brady. I've never heard Brenda Brady's voice. To my knowledge, I've never been in the same room as Brenda Brady. I have never, ever been in her presence, to my knowledge. Okay? So that's the first thing. So I think it's reasonable to suggest that anybody with half a brain who read that would believe that I was at a meeting with these people. So you might say, well, Liam, I know you're in Donegal and we're down, so maybe you could have met on Zoom or something like that. Well, we didn't. That's the first thing, okay? But that's a statement of fact. Now, all these other stuff of who I criticize, etc., they're all just thrown in to vilify me. But the one here is really interesting. When the CEO proposed mediation as a possible way to resolve your issues, now again, what does that mean, my issues? Is it your issues being the issues between myself and the CEO, or myself and the IMSA, or the issues involving the complaint meant against our shed? That's not, I can't parse that out specifically. But it said when he proposed mediation as a possible way to resolve it, you declined, stating that it was too late. So this states, as a matter of fact, according to Dylan MacDonald, that Enda Egan made me an offer of mediation, a proposal of mediation, and that I declined it. That's pretty heavy stuff. That's a statement of fact. Now, I could tell you this is what happened. So it'd be my word against Enda Egan. No, sorry, my word against Dylan MacDonald. Dylan MacDonald has given evidence that this is a fact. He didn't say somebody told me. He told him, he said, this is what happened. The problem is, I didn't attend a meeting with Enda Egan and Brenda Brady. But here's what did happen. I showed you a phone number for Enda Egan earlier. And given with that this mess was just getting so totally out of control, there are hundreds and hundreds. Like, in fact, just again, I know this takes a bit of time, but just stick with me here. This is just like, if you care about detail and you recognize the impact, like as Jack Reacher said, details matter in an investigation. Okay. So this guy goes on to talk about the fact that I have sent all of these communications to the IMSA. All right, let me just say, okay, somewhere down here, right? Oh yeah. So he complains about how many emails I've sent: 74 emails, 40 WhatsApp group, 8 posts, essentially 122 type pieces of communication that I have sent over the last couple of months to the IMSA. And like, the point I've made even to end is, if you actually answered the questions you were asked, none of this would have happened. I mean, if you don't answer the question and I give you 14 reminders and then you blame me because I reminded you, you're really not with the program. You're not with the program. But when you get to a stage where you start making a statement that I had a meeting with Enda Egan and Brenda Brady, this is, let's see, let me go back to this here. So again, what I do is I go through detail and I analyze it and I annotate and I produce evidence, and I'm going to produce you that in a moment. So I never met Brenda Brady, was never introduced to her. So one can only assume that if I had a meeting where the CEO was supported by Brenda Brady, that I presume I would at least have had a nodding relationship. Somebody would have introduced her. I remember I'd never met the person before. That was what you would get from professional people, right? 120 grand a year plus whatever. Now, here's what did happen. I reached out to Enda Egan, having found a phone number, because for 2 years I couldn't find anybody. I can't get this guy. Every time I try to communicate him, he never gets back. He never gets back to me. I have hundreds of unresponded emails over the last 2 years. And so I find a phone number from him. I ring the phone number, and I end up 3 or 4 times ringing the same number, annoying some poor woman in the country who had nothing to do with it because he'd put the wrong number up. So I did email him, say, look, give me the wrong number here. So finally, I don't know how far down the incompetence route you have to get before he then contacted me. So Enda Egan contacted me. He rang me. So Enda Egan rang me on the 1st of October. So I want to tell you here, when this guy, this is not what he says. I didn't say I had a phone conversation. He said, Enda Egan rang me. Now, if he was supported that meeting by Brenda Brady, one has to ask, what does that mean? As he said, now, that was the only connection between me and Enda Egan on that day. So we actually seen here that Brenda, was she sitting on his lap? Was she sitting beside him? Was she on a phone extension? Was she sitting there tuning into the background? What sort of behavior are these monkeys? What sort of, oh, look, I need to calm down a little when I'm saying this, right? Anyway, it's bad enough that these people are purporting to suggest that I was at a meeting with 2 people. One, certainly, I know I was speaking to one on the phone. I have no idea if there was another person in the background, and I wasn't told about it. Look, you got to ask yourself: is this club football or Champions League football? Sorry. Now, the one that really got to me though when I saw this one, when the CEO proposed mediation as a way to resolve your issues, you declined, stating it was too late to engage in such a process. This is either true or it's false. Dylan McDonald is claiming it to be true, as a matter of fact. So, for this to be true, for it to be true, Enda Egan would have to make me an offer of mediation. No, I'd give a knee-jerk reaction and say, no, I don't. No, that's not the way my brain works. If Ed Egan had given me an offer of mediation, I'd be asked him, well, what are you proposing, for example? I wouldn't have ever said that unless he what is he actually talking about? Now, if he was suggesting me, sure, he'd mediate between him and I, myself. I would say, I understand that's how your brain works, but it's not how the rest of the universe needs to work. But I want to make it categorically clear. He did not make me an offer of mediation. This is a lie. This is not only a contortion, but it's a perversion of reality. Just like the BBC and Donald Trump, and just like I've just shown you a few minutes ago about how they have raised information from their own website to cover up this whole fact of the fact is that sheds around the country are not members and have no say in the election of their representatives. Now they're fabricating lies, claiming that in some way I'm sort of a person who can't be negotiated, can't be dealt with because I made him an offer of mediation and he rejected it. But you would rightly say, Liam, but how do we know? So, for example, Brenda might back it up and said, I heard him say that. So I wrote to Brenda, as I've written back to Dylan, and I'm saying, when precisely did I, just if you look at my commentary on this here, what I'd annotated, I'd say, when specifically did Enda Egan propose mediation to me and I declined? So, I mean, this conversation lasted maybe over a period of nearly 2 hours, and it was broken by a dropped phone call, and it came back in again. So I wrote to both of these people to say, well, when did I actually state this? Nobody's come back to me. Nobody's responded. Nobody acknowledged receipt. Everybody's just running away hiding. So Brenda Brady is the acting CEO of the men's sheds. If these people are lying, they should be gone. They should be just gone. So what do I offer in support of that? Well, I offer what I always do. Like Sergeant Maurice McCabe, that's what I do. This phone call, I recorded. I have listened back to this phone call. I have others listen back to this phone call. And I will be producing this phone call and an analysis because obviously I'm reacting to being barred from a particular conference. I'm trying to bring the politicians aware into some level of cognizance, and also to get you, the viewer, to understand that there is detail backing up anything that I'm saying. So what I'm saying to you is, I have Maurice McCabe's recording, the equivalent of this meeting. This is a lie. Oh, where does this end up? Where does this end up? I mean, this is, by the way, none of this, and I hope anybody who has ever done business with me will understand that, the magic I'm part of. I just go back to remind everybody, what am I part of? I'm part of a magical experience up here. When you're a blow-in, as the fella'd say, from where, I'm an outsider, I'm a blow-in. And from the day that my neighbor invited me to go down to a men's shed when we were in a dirty old building that you wouldn't put an animal into. And certainly if we hadn't put the effort into that magical space that we've created with our own hands and very little funding. And I can tell you, zero practical support from the IMSA. Zero practical support. You might say these people have got us all this money. The Irish government were giving money to men's groups as far back, I think, as 1994, because I was one of the early recipients of that in other men's groups that I was involved in. So the sum of money given out even this year to men's group of less than $1 million is so small in relation to the magic of men's sheds. But I'm a member of this group of people. I love their company. And this is, again, one thing we do more than anything else very well. I'm sure so many of the other sheds do it. Every time there's a birthday, there's a cake, and there's a happy birthday. And that's what I'm in. That's my reason for being in this space. It's my reason for being willing to put this effort in. It would have been much easier for me to go quietly. This has cost me in terms of time and energy, in terms of the vilification by a disgruntled ex-member and the complete, destruction of my idea of trust and professionalism by dealing with Enda Egan and this guy Dylan or whatever, and to see this misuse of public money. So my call obviously is the Men's Shed Association, the Association of Sheds, to come together as a group to develop the collaboration between us while recognizing our that each of our sheds is unique to each other. And by selecting our representatives on a regular and elected basis and holding them accountable to us for what they do and how they represent, and competently seeking the sort of funding that is needed to help men be prepared for what I call a tsunami of what's going to come down the road for us in the next, well, certainly from 2030 onwards. I mean, when when AI hits town and hits particularly the jobs of those people who are not in a position to react to that, we need as a community to be strong, and be there and supportive of each other. I see that this conference keeps talking about mental well-being, and I have seen at firsthand the damage being inflicted upon our children, personal damage being inflicted upon our children, who doesn't have had the opportunity and the privilege of educational experience, etc., and working with people of this ilk that I've had. And never once, whether it was Dylan MacDonald or Enda Egan, have they ever expressed, or Ben Dolan, have never expressed any personal support to the mental anguish of our chairman and the damage being done to our shed. I'm sorry, it's not good enough. I hope whoever watches this reflects on this and said, is it okay? My mother often said to me, and obviously it was Edmund Burke, it wasn't my mother, but all it takes for evil to triumph is that good men and women remain silent. I hope it's not you. Thanks.